Good morning. Oh, checking if it was on. It's on. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Kate King. I am the Canadian Chair of GBTA's Global Risk Committee. And before we get started, I'd just like to take a quick minute and introduce the other members of the committee who are here today. If you guys don't mind standing up when I say your name. Chris Palmieri, Frank Harrison, Janina Ricordi, Pettigai Pottinger, here, Ryan Urich, Samantha Pilch, and Vincent Mobilo. Excellent. So, welcome to the session on safe and secure accommodations. Our panelists today are Ryan Urich, Program Manager, Travel Safety and Security at OpenText, Keith Wallace, VP Global Safety and Security at Marriott International, and Jesse Whitehouse, Regional Security Manager at International SOS. Before we get started, can I have a quick show of hands? How many people here know what the blue rubber things on your tables are for? So some maybes. Who wants to fill everybody in? Door stoppers, yes, to be used to keep your door open or closed. Open, somebody said open. If you're having a party in your hotel room and you want your friends to be able to come in and out, yes, exactly. So those are yours to take home. Do what you want with them. Give them to your loved ones. Take them on your business trips. Don't recommend giving them to your kids. Okay, I have one more survey. How many people here have ever booked outside of their company's corporate travel policy for any reason? Don't be shy, no judgment. So, I turn my head whenever you put their head out. 60%, 65%-ish? 70%, okay. So you're not alone. Last year, Concur published their annual business travel survey, and they shared that 90% of business travelers have booked outside of their corporate policy and would do it again. So that's a lot. 90% is a big number. At first, when I heard that, I was kind of like, come on, people. But then when you read a little bit further, it's actually interesting. So in the Concur, SAP Concur and Wakefield's 2023 business travel report, they shared that 48% of business travelers expect their company to allow them to book outside of policy for safety reasons. And 53% of travelers said that they have changed their accommodations in the past 12 months, specifically because they felt unsafe, with 28% saying they've done this more than once. And 23% said that they have felt they were in immediate danger while on a business trip. So, I mean, a lot to unpack there. From my perspective, I think it's great that your employees are thinking about this stuff. They're practicing some situational awareness or they're following their gut instinct. But on the other hand, we all know that booking outside of policy creates other risks. So it's a bit of a paradox. On one side, we have amazing technology solutions now. They're all popping up and saying it's okay, we can capture the out-of-policy bookings, it's all good, which is helpful, but at the same time, I don't know if anyone else sees an issue with employees sort of making their own decisions about which hotels are the safest ones for them to be staying in. Ryan, as a travel manager?
Yeah, so I was asked to kind of give like a little bit of a story here for this one. So as someone who works in, like, is actually a security practitioner for a large company that has traveling staff, we often have travelers who are, they have favorite hotels that they go to or that are close to the business, so it's a little bit easier for them. One example that comes to mind was we do a lot of travel in Istanbul. I've been to Istanbul. It's a great city. It's fantastically safe. However, the hotel that we were actually using, we had them answer kind of a security questionnaire just to kind of do an annual audit on them. And then I went overseas to go see it myself. And then on the checklist, they had checked off that they had, guards on site 24/7, that they had bollards that were preventing, people from entering the parking lot facility. So of course, obviously, when I show up, the bollards are down, and the guard was actually asleep in his post, and I walked right through. There was no vehicle inspection or anything, which they had agreed to in the security questionnaire. So what you get in a questionnaire versus what's on the ground is often different. So we try to take them with a grain of salt and do our own due diligence, but it happens. So you can't really take things at face value.
Yeah, so thank you for that, and we will come back and get more detail on that afterwards. But yes, there you have your travel team who is doing these vetting processes for a reason. One of the biggest misnomers that I see in the debate about booking out of policy and NDC and aggregators, one of the debates, is the idea that being able to locate your people is like the focal point of duty of care. And personally, I find that hard because there is so much that comes before, as far as the preparation and prevention that can potentially prevent an incident from happening where you need to locate your people or reduce it. So I do think that we need to remember to put an equal amount of emphasis on that area. And one of the reasons why you have preferred hotels, why your travel team has that, they're not just vetting those hotels and those airlines for price and location, but also for safety reasons. So today, excuse me, sorry. Today we're going to talk about, these are our session objectives for today. We're going to discuss some of the risks to be aware of when selecting hotels for business travel. Our panel is going to share some best practices and tips and discuss how to prepare travelers for some of the potential threats that they might face when traveling. So there are many types of health and security incidents that can occur in the hotels or the other accommodations that your people are staying in. Illness from contaminated food and water. Insect-borne illnesses and diseases, theft, fires, violent crimes, all kinds of other things. So when an organization, any organization, sends its staff to travel internationally or domestically for business, they have an obligation to mitigate against any foreseeable risks to the best of their ability. This is covered under duty of care, and it's also now covered under the ISO 31030 Travel Risk Management Guidance. There have been countless incidents in recent years, from terrorist attacks in prominent hotels in Mumbai, Jakarta, Nairobi, Islamabad, and other incidents too, stalking and violation of people in hotels, and many, many other incidents that maybe have not been reported or have been, all demonstrate that a more rigorous assessment of the safety of the hotels that you choose are needed. So with that, I'm going to ask the panel a few more questions. Jessie, my first question's for you.
Yes.
So thinking back to the Erin Andrews case that went to trial in 2016, Erin Andrews was a Fox Sports reporter who was filmed without her knowledge in 2 hotels in Ohio and Tennessee. What could have happened differently?
So this was essentially a breach of privacy case that could have been prevented. I'm not sure who in the room knows the story, but Erin was, a stalker removed the peephole on her door room and filmed her with his phone. And this could have been prevented in many ways. What was alarming on this case was to find out that the stalker confessed during his deposition that he didn't come up with this idea to remove the peephole. He had seen a hotel employee doing that and spying on the guest. Shocking. Which shows a hotel vulnerability, but also shows that this was done before, and he continued to victimize other victims. It didn't stop with Miss Andrews. He continued to record in at least 10 other occasions, as per his confession during the deposition. It is a wake-up call to all of us as guests, but also in the hotel security, to make sure that we have all the physical security measures in place, but we're also verifying that, much what Ryan said, don't take things by face value. Yeah, it looks like there is a peephole there, and then if you do that, it just comes out. On the what could be different on this case? It was such a negligence on the hotel front, because if you know a little bit about the case, the perpetrator, the stalker, he explains how he was able to get to the point to film her. And the biggest mistake was when he knew the reporter was in Nashville, he called a few hotels and said, do you have a reservation for Andrews? And one of the hotels eventually confirmed, yes, we do. As simple as that. A breach of privacy right there. Eventually, the perpetrator went to a restaurant, picked up the hotel telephone, a house phone, and said, can you connect me to Aaron Andrews' room, which the hotel did. And the room number appeared on the phone. Another breach of privacy. Measures that, as hotels, we need to review. Nowadays, the threat is ever changing, and vulnerabilities are increasing, and we have to adapt to that. There was several mistakes on the security front, on the privacy breach. Training employees is fundamental to know how to handle privacy and spot suspicious behaviors. There was several security lapses in the Aaron Andrews case, and it comes as a reminder to all of us that the training is fundamental. Keep training, keeping things aware. For most hotels, they all have the security measures in place. They all have the access controls to the best that they can, improving technology, surveillance detection mechanisms. And I believe that hotel security do an excellent job for most places, but the threat is increasing. Who would think, I guess, and this gentleman was an executive who had stayed in hotels for so long, for over 200 nights, as he would say, and he identified, as a guest, those vulnerabilities. He identified that he picked up a phone, a house phone, the room number would show up, because he had seen that before. So this is a reminder for the hotel industry to keep improving and enhancing physical security measures, to keep training people to spot and how to deal with privacy and avoid those breaches, but also a wake-up call for us as guests to be aware and vigilant of our environment.
Great reminder, and thank you for that. Jessie told me last week that she could talk for 45 minutes explaining situations like this and lessons learned from them, but catch up with her later for more advice if you like. But I'm going to turn to Keith, because Keith, you have a wealth of experience, and I'd love to hear if you can share how past incidents have informed Marriott's safety and security processes.
That's a big question.
Yeah.
So,
and keep it to 3 minutes. No.
yeah, no,
Choose
I'll do my
some
best.
exciting stories. I know.
No, all good. So look, I think, for us, one of the major issues, or I think major advantages, I'll say it that way, depending upon how you want to look at it, is the fact that we've been through so much. And that's not to say that other companies haven't had significant challenges. They certainly have, right? But, for me, the elephant in the room, right? Marriott, only Western-based company to be the victim of terrorism 5 times. You mentioned it in the beginning when you talked about Islamabad, Karachi, Jakarta, and then most people forget that on 9/11, when the Twin Towers fell, they pancaked the World Trade Center Marriott that sat between them, right? So 5 times we've been hit. You could look at that and go, well, Marriott's a target, and why would we ever put our people with Marriott? Fair enough. And you certainly can ask that question. But what I would say is, in each one of those incidents, we learned from it, right? And there's a reason why, in some cases, those hotels were targeted. First of all, they were targeted because of their location. The location is in either the central business districts in each town, the best piece of real estate, the most prominent area, whatever it is, which makes it obviously a place where everybody wants to stay. In each one of those incidents, though, that occurred, what I would say is the loss of life could have been exponentially higher. And the reason that it wasn't was because of all of the risk mitigation measures that we've taken in each incident that we learned from, right? There was nothing that we could have planned for on 9/11 that happened. But in the subsequent years, as things started to come out, we evolved with, for example, one of our hallmarks for safety and security for all of our guests, all of our associates, is what we're very proud of, which is our threat condition program. And what we do with that is we actually look at all 8,500 hotels that we have individually, and we assess the risk for that particular hotel in that particular address at that particular location. And then we customize the risk mitigation measures for each one of those hotels to measure it with the risk that is at that location. So let me give you an example. If you were to look at from the U.S. State Department or any government agency would tell you, for example, Indonesia is high threat, and it absolutely is. It's one of the highest threat countries out there. If you look at Jakarta, high threat. We've been the victim of bombings and terrorism in Jakarta. You look at Bali, high threat. But you have other places like Sumatra, you have Nusa Dua, you have Banda Aceh. You have all of these different places around, and they're all still in a high threat environment. But when you look at the locations, and I'll give you an example, in Bali, we have a 500-room, what we call big box courtyard hotel. Looks like a full-service hotel. It has forward-facing windows. It has no setback from the road, and it backs to a beach, which is very hard to secure. It's popular with business travelers, and it has meeting room space. The risk mitigation measures for that hotel are extensive, right? And the issues in Bali would be terrorism and bombings at that particular location. There's no setback, right? So you have to push the checkpoint back down the street, and you have to stop all vehicles before they approach the hotel. You have to have blast-resistant film on those windows to prevent anybody, damage from the windows blowing in, because that's how people get killed, is from the glass and the debris that comes in, right? So the measures that we take there are far different than 3 kilometers down the road in Bali is a Fairfield that sits 1,000 yards up a hill off the road, has no forward-facing windows, is popular with 17 to 24-year-old backpackers, and has no meeting room space, right? And the risk mitigation measures at that hotel are different than the risk mitigation measures at the one 3 kilometers down the road that backs to the beach, right? All in a high-threat country, still high-level risk mitigation measures, but different and customized to each location. That's one of the lessons learned as we go through this, was you can't have a one program fits all. It can't be cookie cutter. It has to be customized. You have to understand what the risk is for each location, each hotel. I think the other thing for us is from a crisis management and crisis response. When you go through those types of incidents, when you go through 26 hotels in the Central Business District in New Orleans and a Hurricane Katrina or Superstorm Sandy or the tsunami in Japan, when you go through those types of incidents, there is no playbook for that, right? And you learn as you go, and we're better at what we do because we've learned from the mistakes that we've made. And from a crisis management, crisis response side, the people that work with me are very humble, and they would never say this, but I'll say it. We're very good at that because of everything that we've been through. And I think you're a product of the experiences that you've had and the incidents that have happened. And it's your responsibility to learn from those and then apply the best measures to that to make sure that everyone's safe and secure.
100%. Amazing. Yeah, that all resonates, and it's so interesting to hear all of those things that Marriott is doing, and probably very useful for our audience who is trying to understand what's going on with the safety and security of where they're booking hotels. And I love the no cookie cutter approach. It makes a ton of sense. It's the only way to do it. Ryan, it makes me want to ask you another question. When it comes to choosing hotels for your travelers and prepping your travelers for where they're going to go, does that resonate, the no cookie cutter approach? I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, everything that Keith said is something that we take into consideration, right? So I would say first and foremost, for those who, are responsible for going out and doing, getting those preferred hotel rates and stuff like that, please loop in your security teams earlier in the RFP process, or if you're planning a meeting and event. I know for ourselves, OpenText, we just ran a multi-city event in Europe. We were looped in after everything had been told, and then we have to come up with our plans after that. So it's a lot easier for us to do our jobs if you bring us in at the planning process. It helps us kind of understand. So like when we look at things, like exactly what Keith said, if we're looking at hotels, and another example is, I can think of Algiers, where we were sending field service reps regularly. There was a new hotel that opened up. It looked very great on paper. However, and they were like, we can walk to the mall from there. It gets us out of our hotels. That's great. But we weren't able to, because we were told basically after the bookings have been made to send them there, that in between that hotel and that mall, there's an alleyway where there is increased homelessness and it's a high theft area. So multiple of our travelers had actually been pickpocketed, as well as have had their food grabbed from homeless people. Those are things that if we are looped in earlier, we can do the assessment, and then we can help provide training for our travelers if they are still going to stay there, that, hey, these are basic precautions you can take. But ultimately, we would work with, we would get in touch with the hotel. We'd talk to the Keiths of the world and say, hey, listen, what are the threats that we need to be considering when we're staying at this property? We can work through, hey, what are your emergency response protocols? Are there any things we need to consider? Like, when you're looking, he said a perfect example too is the environment that it's in. Like, we've, had people go to Ankara and brand new hotel going in. It's right beside where the new U.S. embassy is being built. That is an elevated risk for us if there's going to be a bombing, right? So 100%. Beautiful hotel, and yeah, had 3M glass, or 3M tape to protect the glass blows, but that's putting your people in an unnecessary elevated target area, right? So I would just say get us in the RFP process early. GBTA has a great resource for those who are looking for what kind of questions should I be asking. We do have a security questionnaire. It's not a full stop, and I think that the other two panelists will agree that, it's taken with a grain of salt, but it's something, and it allows us to do our due diligence and dig a little bit deeper into those properties and ultimately make our recommendations. So that's kind of what I would add to that. Anything else, Keith? Okay.
No, I think that's great, and this is definitely what I wanted to get into, was to try to give some sort of concrete advice for buyers when you are assessing those hotels and trying to put together your hotel program, what to take into consideration and what resources you can draw in. So using your own corporate security, engaging the hotel's corporate security if needed, using the GBTA RFP questions, all really great resources. I'm trying to think if there's any. Keith, would you have anything else to add on that particular topic for buyers' advice?
Well, I think Ryan's right on point. I think there is, I'll call it out, I think there's multiple failings when sales teams or books or people go to book and they don't talk to the security teams first, right? Because to your point, right, and I know I know where you're talking about, right? That hotel in Istanbul, yeah, that's another great example, right? For us, Istanbul is the highest threat location in Europe. But if you go outside of that to Bodrum, it's not, right? And it just depends on where it is, right? What Ryan's saying is so critical about having the due diligence done ahead of time, the risk assessment done ahead of time before you select that hotel or before you book that hotel. It's absolutely critical. I think that a good partnership with the hotel, asking to speak to their corporate security director, and I would speak to the corporate security person versus the hotel security person. I would say that just because of some of the experiences that some of you were talking about earlier, from that, what they want the business, they want you there, what it might say on the questionnaire is different. Talk to the corporate security team and get the right assessment. I think it's absolutely critical. I think the other thing too that's important is ask what other groups are in the hotel when your people are staying there, and that's something that's missed by a lot of people, right? If you have, for example, if you have a controversial group staying in that hotel during the time that your travelers are going to be coming in there, is that maybe not the place where you want to put your folks, and you may want to move them to a different hotel. Most people don't look at the reader board when they check in to see what groups are in-house today, and most people don't ask the question, what other groups are in there while the time that we're staying here. And I think that's really important. It could be a session like this, and you could be bringing in a keynote speaker that's controversial. Yeah. And that's going to draw protest, or that's going to draw anger from the staff, or what have you. World's a dangerous place. There's a lot of animosity out there. It's always good to do that due diligence.
That's a great suggestion. I love that. My husband always calls the hotel to ask if there's any groups in house because he wants to know if there's any sports teams, and makes me change the reservation if there are. But we're a sports family. But yeah, he's diligent about that.
Kate, I wanted to add to the panel here on the believe but verify. So much what Ryan was saying. Sometimes you're going to see do you have cameras? Yes. Do you have security guards at night? Yes, we do. Trust but verify,
100%.
right? I've seen, I do the hotel vetting globally, and I have seen, do you have cameras? Can I see them? And then they don't work, half of them. The guards are sleeping. Or you will have those on the face value, we have them, but how good is their functionality? And also, in line what Keith was saying, is those incidents that will make hotels better. So a very important question is to ask when you're selecting those hotels, please share the most recent incident, if you can, and how did you deal with that? And the hotel that tells you, we haven't had an incident, think twice. Because I have seen controversial people staying in hotels in Montreal, and there was bombing in the lobby in Montreal. Not likely publicized because it was contained and it was dealt with. But a Saudi prince was staying in a hotel in Marriott, and there was a few bombs going on at the restaurant. Never made the news, but it happened. So a hotel that don't report an incident is probably not ready to deal with that. So that's my 2 cents adding to it.
Yeah, and it goes the other way. It's not just controversial person, but it's also certain entertainers, right? Do you want to be checking into a hotel where Taylor Swift is staying on her tour, right? Probably not, right? And the reason why is because you're going to have a hard time getting your people in and out of that hotel with all the security that's going on and the 20,000 screaming people that are surrounding the hotel while it's out there, right? It's all of the, now they're not going to tell you that she's staying there, but with your relationships that you have with the people that you're booking with, you got to ask those kinds of questions. It's really important because it's going to impact the stay, it's going to impact your business, and it's going to impact your people.
100%. Great advice. Jesse, I have another one for you. How, from your perspective, should organizations be preparing their people for traveling for business, especially to new destinations where the risks are different than what they're used to?
I think preparation is key. Knowing what to expect when you get to an unknown location. There are places out there that want to get out of the airport, you cannot get back in. Do you know that? So preparing, somebody's traveling on your behalf, and this person needs to be very comfortable and very confident that the company is looking after them, whatever that is. And it's very nice when you get to a place, I actually take a picture of the airport, what it looks like, check my route to the hotel or whatever meeting I'm going, because if communication failure, if my WhatsApp or my technology doesn't work, I have a printed copy of what I am going, and I'm not only relying on those things. So the companies nowadays, they have to have redundancies and explain not to trust just technology. You need to know what to expect when you're getting to a location. And it goes from costumes, local culture, what you should say and not say. You don't want to offend anybody in their own country. If you are part nowadays of the LGBTQ community, that things are evolving on that front. There are 69 countries where it is illegal, and how do you handle immigration questions? You should be briefed and prepared. And in other countries where it is not illegal, but is frowned upon, São Paulo, Brazil has the highest homicide in the LGBTQ community in the world. And if you're part of the community, you probably should know it, that is legal in Brazil, but your risk would be very high if you get out of the hotel to party at night, exposing yourself to certain exterior threat. So on the company front is to match what Kit was saying, analyze the specific environment down to the city, right? If you're in Mexico, The threat in Nogales is going to be very different than the threat in Mexicali. Right, in Nogales is a more traditional culture and won't be as tolerant as Mexicali, a more cosmopolitan culture will accept all cultures. And it goes down to some Asian profiles. You know, there is some countries who will be less welcoming with certain cultures. And the employee going to those locations needs to be well aware because they may not be aware. And for women's travelers, you know, some countries are not as welcoming of women dress code than others. And you should be aware of that, not trying to impose yourself on other people's cultures, but rather respecting it. The briefing side needs to be the responsibility of the company sending you out there.
Great. It's very interesting, very relevant. Thank you. Ryan, I wanted to ask you, just switching gears a little bit. So you have you've selected your hotels, you have the right hotels in your program. Can you tell us a little bit about your process for ensuring that the employees use the approved accommodation?
Yeah, so I think this is a battle that everybody can understand. Non-compliant booking is, I can think of most of the companies that I've been to. I know 80 is a great benchmark, but I would be kind of hard-pressed to believe anybody's actually at that number. So one of the big things that we try to do is working with Concur or your BCD or whoever that your travel manager is. We've worked to restrict bookings, so we've just kind of hid properties within Concur. We try to limit it so when we're looking, and this is something that is going to be implemented hopefully later on at my company currently, but having a couple options in each city, and that also narrows down for those who, we had an incident recently in Taiwan where we did not know where the person was staying because they were doing consulting work and they booked through the preferred hotel for the vendor so they could expense it. But you can use tools to restrict where they're going. Another thing that we have is any travel that's booked outside. So it could be, a customer, you're going to, sales to the military or whatever, you're using their preferred lodging. We do have an email address that we encourage all employees to actually forward those itineraries. That way that's captured and uploaded into our version of Travel Tracker, whether it be ISO or ISOS, Crisis 24, whatever that might be. But you need to make sure that you're capturing that data. Another thing that we try to do is, we try to get out in front of our travelers, especially targeting certain groups, right? Your sales teams are going to be out there, your consultants, looking at, you have that data, who your frequent travelers are, right? That's not hard to find, but working with other stakeholders in the business to kind of get out in front of them and say, hey, we noticed that, Toronto or maybe it's Mumbai, Hyderabad for us is a big one, knowing that those locations, getting in front of those travelers and saying, hey, we're here to support you. These are the hotels that we recommend. A lot of time, it kind of builds that relationship with your traveler as well. And then we loop that back in with a debrief where we check in. Hey, can you answer some questions about the stay, right? Did you feel safe and secure? Did you notice these things? If I can't get there physically, I'll have them take photos. I'll have them, record a little video walking through the aisles, right? I know that one of our checklist questions is, are stairwells unobstructed, right, in the event of an emergency? That's usually checked off 100% of the time. I can tell you, I have been to hotels in Algiers where there are tables in there, there's chairs, like you're having to fight your way through, right? So it's really a two-way street with your travelers and building that relationship. And to Jesse's point too, I think that it's really good when you can, you show them that you do care and that it's a give and take, but that briefing is so important. So getting out there, like our welcome email, when it goes out, right, it talks about, hey, this is the travel security, this is hotel safety and security tips, or identifying that travel based on risk level, and then assigning training through the LMS, right? It's an audible record for your company to have that they've completed that training. There's a lot of things that you can do. I know that we struggle, and the companies that I've been with is struggling with enrollment, but like everybody has an app. Mandate it. Put that on your corporate device and have that automated go out there every time, and then check those enrollment numbers. Work with, your security, your travel services, your procurement teams, and kind of build that awareness through Yammer, email campaigns, lunch and learns, stuff like that. You can really kind of drive and influence. I don't want to be coercive. I don't want to be the sheriff. I don't have a badge. I'm not coming to crack down on you and slap your wrist. I'm a partner there to make sure that you're safe, and that's the biggest thing.
That's great, super good advice, and especially with the feedback. If your employer, we're all business travelers, if your employer or travel manager isn't asking you for feedback of the hotels that you're staying in, and you do come back from a trip when you didn't think that it was great, you had issues, do your colleagues a favor and say something. I'm a loudmouth. I will say if I come back from a hotel, if I put in a hotel that I don't think is a good one, I'm telling the travel manager, I'm telling HR. And some colleagues feel shy to do it and don't feel comfortable. So if you do feel comfortable and you're not shy, all the more reason to speak up and let it be known. And they're happy to. If they tell you that, they're going to be like, thank you, that's great. I wouldn't want to send like another new hire there. I'll look into it. So
Can I add one thing
Yeah.
to what he said? He gave excellent advice. Look, most of the major hotel companies, right, Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, IHG, all of them, they all have a intelligence team that works with as part of their security apparatus. Right? Reach out to that corporate security person, reach out to that intelligence team and ask them, what's your assessment of that particular hotel at that particular location in that particular city or country? And they'll tell you, right? You know, again, that goes back to what we talked about, doing the due diligence ahead of time. But I know for a fact that each one of those, all the major hotel companies have an intelligence team that looks at that kind of stuff. So
yeah, 100%. All right. We're wrapping up at the end. Brian, do you know how much time we have left? Sorry, I don't know that.
Yeah, we got about 7 minutes.
I do want to leave some time for questions and answers. Anything that any of you would like to share that you didn't get a chance to?
I'll just say one other thing, kind of hits on how JC started and how Ryan kind of finished, is the one thing that is, for me, it's my big core issue, is that you know, Ryan was saying they have employees, associates going to Algiers and to all these other countries. Most companies do not do a good job of training their associates how to travel to those locations, right? I work for the largest hotel travel company in the world, and you know, look, we travel, our people travel every single day, and they have what I call travel arrogance. They know how to travel. I've been traveling for 40 years. You're going to tell me how to travel? Right? Right? That's what will get you in trouble. Right? That travel arrogance, that routine is what will get you in trouble. When you have young or new associates coming in, regardless, young or old, if they've never been to Algiers, if they've never been to Nigeria, if they've never been to Pakistan, if they've never been to Mexico, for me, I feel that there's a responsibility to talk to them about where they're going and what they need to do, right? There are things, simple little things that we try to teach, like there's only one place to sit when you get into an Uber, and that's behind the driver, right? Because that's the only place in the car where you control the driver and the driver doesn't control you, right? Your mom and dad told you from the very beginning, right? Two things that when we were growing up: don't talk to strangers, and don't get into cars with people that you don't know, and you do it every single day, right? Right? You know, what to do. Everybody relies on their phone. Assume that if you're in a car accident or something has happened to you, or you've been robbed in the alley walking back and forth between the hotels, they're taking your phone and they're taking your passport. What's your backup, your redundancy for that, right? All those different things that we try to teach our travelers to do, I think companies can do a better job of that. I think it's really important. I think it goes back to duty of care.
Can I add something to it? I love what Keith said about the arrogance of travelers and saying, oh, I haven't been, travelers who haven't been at country A, B, or C, they should be briefed. But more so, travelers who have been to many places, to Brazil, Mexico, and those high threat, oh, I've been there all the time, and it will never happen to me. Well, I was a victim of my arrogance. Last time I was in São Paulo, me saying, oh yeah, I'm a Brazilian, I've been in this hotel for 3 weeks, nothing will happen. I had a gun in my head to say, give me your phone, because of my traveler. I'm a security professional, and I was negligent, because I said, you know what, I'm a local, I look local, I speak the language, you know, nobody's going to approach me, and they did. So, you know, I lost my phone, no big deal. But it could have been worse, right? So being arrogant when you're traveling, overconfidence, who you're putting you in trouble.
And to your point, if you have folks that are going to places where they are familiar with it and they are the locals are much more likelier to be targeted than the folks that aren't locals, right? So, we see that a lot.
Amazing. Well, great. Thank you all so much. Very insightful. Really appreciate it. We do have a few minutes if anyone has any questions for the panelists. Yes.
So very timely. I had a site visit about 2 weeks ago, and it's with a company who has very strong security practices in place. The individuals touring around were just being knowledgeable about the property. They were very specific. We do have actually a lot of cameras everywhere, but we do not in the elevator and the floors, and that might be an issue for them. They mentioned that it's not an ask for the hotel at this point, but it may go there. And to the point of their security practices they have. This individual is planning to go to Mexico City, and he has to check in with this company every half an hour. Otherwise, the citizen's been
Yep.
or something.
Yep.
So that's kind of the level. So from a hotel looking at for advice on this, do we get ahead of this? Do we approach security and say, hey, can you maybe do an assessment of our property to just to kind of put that to do that assessment that we are serious about this as well. But not to avoid incur a cost or getting more cameras, if that's to your example, like taking out a people and putting a camera in. That's we had cameras on the floor. We might have kept something like that, right? So just kind of looking for some guidance there. What would you do in that scenario? Do we get ahead of this? Do we just wait for them to come back to us? What are your suggestions there?
Well, I was going to say from my side, yes, that is something that we look at. It depends on the risk, like on where we're going and kind of what that risk location or that specific risk looks like. But it is something that we consider. Video retention is another thing that we look at too, right?
And do the cameras actually
Yeah.
have good
Yeah, like, because I mean, listen, I've been to a fair amount of properties throughout North America, and people always talk about how, you're not going to a high risk area. No, there are areas in Canada and in the US that I think are way more dangerous than sending someone to Riyadh or even Jazan, right? Like, it depends on where it is. But yeah, I think if you have a good, if companies coming out to you and asking you for that, there's a good chance that they have security systems at their own office that they're used to, and they'll probably understand the make and model of the camera that you're using and what the capabilities are of that. That's going to be something that I think, at least within my side, and I know the ASIS chapter, like we do have a travel risk management kind of area as well now, and we're kind of getting more steam and rolling. So I think that's something that you will continue to see. So in terms of getting ahead of it, I mean, that's your hotel's ultimate decision, and I think I would, lean on Keith on that. But I know it's something that I would expect more of if I'm a hotel. We will be asking those questions, especially as the ISO standard becomes more concrete and more people come up to speed with it.
Look, I think at the end of the day, and I'll just tell you, from my awareness, Canada, the United States, most hotels do not have cameras on guest room floors, right? It wasn't the standard when those hotels were built. There's obviously, most hotels are independently owned by owners, and there's costs that come with that. I'll say it, it's true. Internationally, it's more prominent to have that, especially overseas. I think in Latin America, it's probably 50-50. Right, based on my experience, and I don't know that there's a whole lot that you can do to get around that. If you got to go to those locations and none of the hotels in Mexico City have cameras on the floor, none of the hotels in Mexico City have cameras on the floor, right? So then it becomes more about, all right, what are the other risk mitigation measures that you have in that hotel, and your risk assessment and your due diligence and all the things that we talked about today to make an informed decision as to whether or not that's the right place to put the business traveler.
Yeah, I mean, example could be, do you have access control to your floors, right? I mean, a ton of hotels, that's a big thing we look at, right? And also, do you have an audible record of those keys, right? Those are types of questions that we ask as well. I think it was mentioned earlier, LGBTQ2S+ and female travelers too. Do you have female-specific floors that have additional security precautions? Very common in India when we have travelers go there. Don't see it as much in North America or other areas, but those are things that we will ask. And if you have other measures in place that can kind of reduce that threat, and we might be more comfortable with that, to Keith's point, it's going to cost you a lot of money to put a CCTV system, right? Like, and if it's not just those halls, it's like then you're looking, okay, well, is the parking lot covered? Or, you know, like, yeah, you probably have all your main exit points, you'll have your stairwells and stuff like that, but it does get quite costly.
Yeah, and it goes back to, right? It goes back to, look, I've worked in the executive protection field for a long time. You are the agent in charge of your own executive protection, and that needs to be conveyed as well to every associate, right? They have to have some sort of situational awareness, not walking around looking at their phone, not walking around with earbuds in, and not paying attention. There has to be some level of situational awareness, right? Because the hotels can only do so much, but you have to then also, they have to assume some accountability and some responsibility, right? We all do that when we travel, right?
Yep.
You had your experience, right? And she won't have that experience again, I guarantee you, right? So
Nope.
from that standpoint, so there is a level of that as well.
Any other questions?
Can you say? You got the technology company. I mean, I can tell you.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so, I mean, obviously, if your travel's booked and it's compliant, it's booked through Concur, it's booked whatever you use, right? We get notifications you'll get it from International SOS, you'll get it from Crisis 24, whoever you use. We'll get real-time alerts, and then typically we'll check in. Are we checking in every 30 minutes? No, but we will let you know. And typically, it depends on the company. If you have the app, it's great. You can, send that through the app and have them check in, and they'll get the alert on their phone, so they're aware of it. But that's one aspect of it. I would say the other aspect on the hotel front is we had people in Taiwan during the earthquake that happened, right? The hotel was incredible in their response. They got in contact with our travelers right away. They gave them a full understanding of what the risk is. They were trained and well versed in earthquakes because they're in a seismically active area, right? So it's a little column A, column B. We use a couple methods. I mean, that's why you should always make sure your travelers have their contact details updated in their booking profiles, email, phone number, secondary phone number. Even like, I know that it can get a little bit like you're pulling teeth from them sometimes, but if you can clearly explain that in the event that something goes wrong, I'm not following you. I'm not Big Brother. I don't care what you. Well, I mean, I do care. I do deep down care. But I'm not like, oh, hey, Ryan has slipped off to go watch Arsenal play on Saturday because he's got a break, right? I'm not following you there, right? So it's in the event of an emergency, we need to be able to contact you and we need to be able to provide assistance. So it's really driving that. And again, that's just showing this is a duty of care we have as a company. We ask that you put location services on during the office hours or whatever that might be. Bleisure is kind of getting a little messy right now. But you can track through app, phone. I mean, you can use if you want to create a WhatsApp group. Also, depending on the country you're going to, another great example is if you are using a car service or you're using a security company, typically you'll have a WhatsApp group with your driver, with your point, like they'll kind of give you updates on where people are. So that's another resource too, right? You can contact them to confirm, hey, are they at the office? Or hey, we noticed there's an alert. Are you on the way? Or are you at the hotel? Where are you? And you might be able to shelter in place or, adjust that journey, right?
Yeah, I'll just add for us, one of the best things that we ever did was we built a global security operations center, right? And we're tied into Crisis 24, ISOS. Everybody's with the same group, right? The traveler books, that information comes in. We actually, if you deviate from our travel program, you get a visit from our investigations team, right? And you don't want to visit from the investigations team. And so, our people are pretty good about that. And not to say that we don't have issues, we do, but our people are good about it. But we learned a lot of lessons back in 2020 during the riots when we had guests coming in. And how do you get notifications out if people are out of the hotels and they're trying to get back? Or if somebody is landing at an airport and they're trying to get to the hotel, and then do you want them coming through a riot? And how do you, or civil disturbance or unrest? And we pushed out those notifications either through for us through our Bonvoy app, if they have that, or through, as Ryan has said numerous times, Crisis 24 has something called World Queue. We make our people download that. And earlier today, you talked about how do you get them to do that and how do you drive that awareness. Every year we have Safety and Security Month. We'll bring in the vendors. We'll have them in the lobby of our building. We'll try to get everybody enrolled in the app. When people come in, we try to do anything we can to market and promote that from a safety and security side. And usually when you tell them it's for their safety and it might just save their life, like I love the doorstop because that's the best thing that you could ever carry with you in your bag, right? And we give those out. Those little things like that go a long way.
I would just add one thing to that as well. I think with also as a security practitioner, like when things happen, use them as case studies. Never let a crisis go to waste, right? I like to talk to people and say, hey, we had a near miss, or we were able to get someone out, or we gave them guidance, right? I like to have those, like I do like a travel spotlight where I have people who have had experiences in certain countries and stuff like that give their kind of a blurb or whatever that might be. You can create employee resource groups as well, which I think are really good, where you can connect travelers. But don't hide those things from your travelers. I think that education and transparency is very important. And it's all about that relationship building. If they know that, hey, this happened, they might be more inclined to say, oh shoot, I better have that app, right? I didn't have that app for the previous last trip. So be honest with people. Like, let them know the capabilities. Let them know the failings sometimes too, because they need to see that, right?
It works. One of the best examples for us, and we use it, and a lot of people got compliant. If they weren't compliant, was we had a senior executive who deviated from the program, booked the travel outside the restriction window. We didn't have sight of that. We only learned because we were sending people, it was in Brazil, we were sending people to pick him up. And on the road out of the airport, they attempted to kidnap him. And it went south quick. Fortunately, they were able to fight it off and protect him. At the end of the day, that reverberated through the organization, right? And you never want to be that guy.
Yeah.
You don't want to be that guy, right?
That's a good one. We have time for one more question if anyone has one. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I'm curious, are you seeing any trends, feedback from your travelers when you're, they're at the stage of, this is my personal time?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky. So I've been talking to a lot of industry peers about this. It seems that we're all kind of divided on it. I mean, the big thing for us is, and it's not really from a booking standpoint, but it's IP and access to, like, if you're traveling with your laptop and you're going somewhere and you haven't cleared it, it's a restricted destination. Or your, like, good cyber practices are regardless of where you're going. We do offer our travelers, like, hey, if you, like, perfect example, we have people fly in, to Israel. Well, we did before, but they would say, hey, we're staying in Tel Aviv and we want to go to Haifa, or we want to go to Jerusalem on the weekend, right? We will say, like, listen, if you want to, you can turn the location services on your app and, we can contact you and try to assist you. But it's kind of, we're trying to figure out is in terms of when they're on their time, are they financially responsible for it, or are we, because we sent them there? So I think that's still something that you're seeing being, kind of shaken out throughout the industry. I haven't been able to get a concrete answer really from anybody on that yet. But it does bring in that liability. Who's responsible after hours? I mean, we'll help them. We'll support them. I know I think medical and stuff like that, I mean, you're still covered if we have general business travel insurance, right? But it is a gray area right now that I think hopefully in the next year or two is figured out. I'm sure there'll be a lawsuit, and then we'll all react.
Everyone's waiting for the
Yeah.
first date.
Yeah, it's who's going to get burned, right? So.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think people are waiting, but for now, I just want to call out, because yesterday there was another breakout that some of you might have attended called Black Ops, where Frank from the Risk Committee gave some good answers to this question as well. And start with the facts. At the end of the day, your organization's going to make a decision. Not everyone's going to make the same decision, but figure out what you do know and document it. Talk to your benefits partners, your broker, so you know what insurances you have in place. Decide if you want to supplement that or not. Make it clear to the employees. Anything that you do know, document it in the policy. And yeah, and figure out your stance because questions are going to come. But I think that's it. Oh,
And when you do that, always get the lawyers to endorse it so that it comes out with legal privilege on it, so that if an employee pushes back on it, you got the holy grail.
great point. Another great point. Yeah. So I think we're out of time today, but I wanted to thank all of my panelists very much for this. Very insightful. Thank you all for listening and for joining. This session is going to be recorded and the slides will be put on the GBTA website or the hub. So there is a slide that I just clicked through that has a bunch of resources. If you want further information on anything we talked about, you can download it. There are a few things to look out for that are coming up from the risk committee. If you're going to GBTA Global Convention in Atlanta in July, there's a couple of sessions that we'll be presenting there, and also a couple of things that will be coming from the Canada team in the next couple of months. One last announcement, there is on the app a survey, all the sessions here, where we ask you to rate the session, say what you liked, what you didn't like, would you recommend. If you get a chance to do that, would be appreciated. If you have any other questions, I think these guys will be here for the next few minutes, so feel free to go to the next session or hang out and talk. Thank you.